Keanu Reeves had seen it all. The glitz, the glamour, the adoration of millions. For decades, he had been the face of action-packed blockbusters, philosophical dramas, and heartfelt romances. But life wasn't just about fame for Keanu. Beneath the surface of his celebrity status lay a man who had faced more than his share of heartbreaks. The loss of loved ones, the struggles with loneliness, and the constant pressure to stay relevant in an ever-changing industry had shaped him into someone deeply grounded. He wasn't the kind of person to let success go to his head. Instead, he carried himself with humility, always aware that life was unpredictable. One crisp morning, Keanu decided to take a break from the chaos of Hollywood. He wanted to step away from the red carpets, the interviews, and the endless cycle of movie promotions. He craved simplicity, a chance to reconnect with the real world far removed from the bubble of stardom. Dressed in faded jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and a well-worn leather jacket, Keanu stepped out of his modest home, looking every bit like an ordinary guy. No entourage, no flashy car, no sunglasses hiding his identity. Just Keanu, ready to blend into the crowd. His mission that day was simple. He needed to buy a car. Not one of those luxurious sports cars that celebrities often flaunted, but something practical, reliable, and affordable. Keanu had always believed in living within his means, and this philosophy extended to his choice of vehicles. He drove older models not because he couldn't afford newer ones, but because he didn't see the point in wasting money on extravagance. Today, however, he felt the need to upgrade. His current car was starting to show its age, and he figured it was time for a change. With a list of requirements scribbled on a small notepad, Keanu headed to a nearby car dealership. It wasn't one of those high-end places catering to the rich and famous. This was a modest establishment, tucked away, in a quieter part of town, where regular folks came to buy their dream cars, or at least the best they could afford. The sign outside read Auto Haven, and though it lacked the sleek design of fancier dealerships, there was something inviting about it. Keanu parked his old sedan in the lot and walked inside, ready to explore his options. The showroom was bustling with activity. Salespeople darted between customers, pointing out features of various cars and trying to close deals. Posters advertising discounts and financing plans lined the walls, while the smell of fresh polish lingered in the air. Keanu wandered around, taking in the rows of vehicles on display. Some were shiny new models, while others were slightly used but still in good condition. He paused by a silver sedan, running his hand along its smooth surface as he considered whether it might suit his needs. It didn't take long for a salesperson to approach him. A young man with a clipboard and a practiced smile greeted Keanu enthusiastically. "Looking for something specific today, sir?" he asked, his tone dripping with eagerness. Keanu nodded politely and explained what he was after. A dependable car with low mileage, decent fuel efficiency, and a price tag that wouldn't break the bank. The salesperson listened intently, jotting down notes before disappearing to fetch some brochures. While waiting, Keanu continued browsing. He liked to take his time when making decisions, especially when it came to big purchases. Each car told a story, and he wanted to find one that resonated with him. As he examined a blue hatchback, another employee approached, this time the dealership manager. Middle-aged and wearing an expensive suit, the manager exuded authority. At first glance, he seemed friendly enough, but there was an edge to his demeanor, a sense that he valued efficiency over genuine connection. "Can I help you with anything?" the manager asked, his voice clipped and professional. Keanu smiled and reiterated his criteria, explaining that he was still undecided and needed more information before committing. The manager's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of impatience crossing his face. Perhaps he assumed Keanu was just another indecisive customer wasting his time. Or maybe he mistook Keanu's casual attire for financial instability. Whatever the reason, the manager's tone grew colder as the conversation progressed. Minutes turned into what felt like hours as Keanu asked thoughtful questions about warranties, maintenance costs, and trade-in values. He wasn't being difficult. He simply wanted to make an informed decision. But the manager's patience wore thin. What started as polite exchanges soon devolved into terse responses. Finally, unable to contain his frustration, the manager snapped. "Listen, buddy," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut through steel. "If you're not serious about buying, maybe you should leave. We don't have time to waste on people who can't make up their minds." Keanu blinked, momentarily, stunned by the sudden hostility. He hadn't expected such rudeness, especially in a place meant to serve customers. Before he could respond, the manager grabbed him firmly by the arm and began steering him toward the exit. Shocked but composed, Keanu allowed himself to be escorted out without protest. As the glass doors swung shut behind him, he found himself standing alone in the parking lot, the weight of the encounter settling over him. For a moment, Keanu simply stood there, staring at the dealership's sign. The incident replayed in his mind. The dismissive remarks, the physical shove, the underlying assumption that he was somehow less worthy because he hadn't rushed into a purchase. It would have been easy to feel angry or embarrassed, but instead, Keanu felt something else entirely: determination. There was a fire in his chest, a quiet resolve that refused to let the experience define him. Brushing off the dust from his jacket, Keanu straightened up and glanced back at the building. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face. "You'll regret this," he murmured softly, almost to himself. It wasn't a threat, nor was it fueled by malice. It was a promise, a declaration that this moment would become the catalyst for something greater. Little did the manager know, he had just set into motion a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Keanu stood in the parking lot for a few moments, letting the cool breeze wash over him. The sting of being kicked out wasn't lingering. It was more like a spark that had ignited something deep inside. He didn't feel defeated or angry. Instead, he felt oddly energized. There was something about the manager's arrogance and dismissiveness that struck a chord with Keanu. It reminded him of all the times he'd seen people treated unfairly, not because they deserved it, but because someone else assumed they were less important. He glanced around, taking in the quiet neighborhood surrounding the dealership. Across the street, he spotted a small cafe with warm yellow lights glowing through its windows. Without giving it much thought, Keanu crossed the road and stepped inside. The cafe smelled of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods, a comforting aroma that seemed to wrap itself around him. He ordered a black coffee and found a seat by the window, pulling out a worn notebook from his jacket pocket. The notebook was something Keanu carried everywhere. It wasn't just for jotting down random thoughts or reminders. It was his creative sanctuary. Over the years, he'd filled its pages with ideas for scripts, sketches of characters, and notes on life lessons he'd picked up along the way. Today, however, it would serve a different purpose. As he sipped his coffee, Keanu began to write. At first, it was just fragments, words like fairness, transparency, and respect. Then, slowly, the pieces started coming together. What if, he thought, there was a way to turn this negative experience into something positive? What if he could create a business that stood in direct contrast to everything that had happened at the dealership? Keanu imagined a place where people weren't judged based on their appearance or how quickly they made decisions. A place where customers were treated as equals, not as dollar signs waiting to be cashed in. His mind raced with possibilities, and before long the outline of an idea began to take shape. Keanu envisioned a car dealership unlike any other, a place where honesty was the foundation of every transaction. No hidden fees, no high-pressure sales tactics, no condescending attitudes, just straightforward, genuine service. But it wouldn't stop there. He wanted to go beyond selling cars. He wanted to build a community, a place where people felt valued, whether they were buying a brand new vehicle or searching for an affordable used one. And why stop at helping customers? Keanu realized he could also make a difference by hiring employees who needed a second chance, people who might otherwise struggle to find work. As he sketched out these ideas in his notebook, Keanu couldn't help but smile. This wasn't just about proving a point to the manager who had wronged him. It was about creating something meaningful, something that aligned with his values. He believed in giving back, in lifting others up, and in using whatever resources he had to make the world a little better. If this dealership could become a reflection of those principles, then maybe, just maybe, it could inspire change far beyond the automotive industry. By the time Keanu finished his coffee, the initial spark of inspiration had grown into a full-blown plan. He decided to call it Reeves Roadsters. The name had a nice ring to it, simple yet memorable. It hinted at his involvement without shouting it from the rooftops. After all, Keanu didn't want this venture to succeed because of his celebrity status. He wanted it to stand on its own merits, built on trust and integrity rather than fame. But turning this dream into reality wouldn't be easy. Keanu knew he'd have to roll up his sleeves and put in the hard work. He wasn't naive enough to think that opening a business would be smooth sailing, especially since he'd never done anything like this before. Still, he welcomed the challenge. Challenges had always been a part of his life, shaping him into the person he was today. Whether it was navigating the ups and downs of Hollywood or coping with personal losses, Keanu had learned to adapt and persevere. This would be no different. Over the next few days, Keanu threw himself into research. He visited other dealerships, not to compete with them, but to observe how they operated. He paid close attention to what worked and what didn't, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Some places were sleek and polished, catering to wealthy clients who expected nothing less than perfection. Others were run down and chaotic, leaving customers frustrated and dissatisfied. Neither extreme appealed to Keanu. He wanted Reeves Roadsters to strike a balance between professionalism and approachability, offering top-notch service without alienating anyone. He also reached out to friends and acquaintances who had experience in business management. One of them, a former colleague from a movie set, happened to run a successful chain of auto repair shops. When Keanu shared his vision, the friend was immediately intrigued. "You're really going to do this?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Keanu nodded firmly. "I've got to try," he replied. "If I can make even a small difference, it'll be worth it." With his friend's guidance, Keanu began drafting a detailed business plan. He mapped out everything from the type of inventory he wanted to stock to the layout of the showroom. Every decision was guided by the same core principle: putting people first. For instance, instead of stocking only expensive luxury vehicles, Keanu planned to offer a wide range of options at various price points. That way, everyone, from students looking for their first car to families needing a reliable minivan, could find something that suited their needs. One of the most exciting aspects of the plan was the team Keanu intended to assemble. Rather than hiring slick salespeople who prioritized commissions over customer satisfaction, he envisioned a staff made up of individuals who shared his vision, mechanics who took pride in their craft, single parents trying to provide for their kids, former inmates eager to rebuild their lives. Keanu believed that everyone deserved a fair shot, regardless of their past. By giving these individuals opportunities, he hoped to create a workplace culture rooted in empathy and mutual support. Of course, funding the project was another hurdle. While Keanu wasn't exactly short on money, he preferred to keep things modest. Instead of pouring millions into flashy marketing campaigns or extravagant renovations, he focused on practical investments. He leased a small lot on the outskirts of town, far from the glitzy showrooms of LA. It wasn't perfect, but it had potential. With a fresh coat of paint, some landscaping, and a few upgrades, it could become the ideal home for Reeves Roadsters. As the weeks went by, Keanu poured his heart and soul into the project. He spent hours tinkering with designs for the logo, testing color schemes until he found the perfect combination. He personally interviewed candidates for the team, seeking out individuals whose stories resonated with him. Each step brought him closer to bringing his vision to life, and with each milestone, his excitement grew. Despite the challenges, Keanu remained optimistic. He knew that success wouldn't come overnight, but he was willing to wait. Patience had always been one of his strengths, and he trusted that the effort he put in now would pay off in the long run. More importantly, he believed in the power of kindness and authenticity. In a world often driven by greed and superficiality, Keanu saw an opportunity to remind people that businesses could and should be forces for good. By the time the final details were in place, Keanu felt a sense of pride he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just a business venture, it was a reflection of who he was as a person. From the humble beginnings in a cafe to the tangible reality of Reeves Roadsters, every moment had been infused with purpose. And though he didn't know what the future held, one thing was certain. Keanu Reeves was ready to prove that sometimes the greatest victories come from the simplest acts of humanity. The sun was just beginning to rise as Keanu arrived at the small lot he had leased for Reeves Roadsters. The space wasn't much to look at yet, just a patch of cracked asphalt surrounded by chain-link fencing, but Keanu saw its potential. To him, it wasn't just an empty lot. It was a blank canvas waiting to be transformed into something extraordinary. With a cup of coffee in hand and a determined glint in his eye, Keanu stepped out of his car and surveyed the area. Today was the day the dream would start becoming reality. Keanu didn't waste any time. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work alongside a small crew he had hired to help with renovations. They started by clearing out weeds that had overtaken the corners of the lot and patching up potholes in the driveway. Keanu even pitched in, hauling away debris and sweeping dust until his hands were dirty and his muscles ached. It wasn't glamorous work, but Keanu didn't mind. In fact, he found a strange satisfaction in doing things himself. There was something grounding about working with your own two hands, especially when you knew the end result would mean so much. As the physical transformation of the lot began to take shape, Keanu turned his attention to sourcing inventory. This was one of the most important parts of the process, and he approached it with the same care and thoughtfulness he brought to everything else. He visited auctions, scoured listings online, and even reached out to local mechanics who might have leads on reliable used cars. Keanu insisted on personally inspecting each vehicle before purchasing it. He wanted to ensure that every car sold at Reeves Roadsters was not only affordable, but also dependable. After all, trust was the cornerstone of his entire vision. One afternoon, while visiting a mechanic's garage, Keanu met a man named Carlos. Carlos was in his late 30s with calloused hands and a quiet demeanor. He introduced himself as the owner of the shop and explained that he specialized in refurbishing older vehicles. As they talked, Keanu learned that Carlos had been struggling to make ends meet after a series of setbacks, including a costly medical bill for his young daughter. Despite the challenges, Carlos hadn't given up. His passion for fixing cars was evident in the way he spoke about them, and Keanu could see the pride he took in his work. Impressed by Carlos's dedication, Keanu struck a deal. He offered to buy several refurbished cars for Reeves Roadsters, providing Carlos with much-needed income. But more than that, Keanu invited him to join the team. "I need someone like you," Keanu said sincerely. "Someone who knows cars, inside and out, and cares about the people driving them." Carlos hesitated at first, unsure if he was qualified to work at a dealership, but Keanu reassured him, emphasizing that skill and heart mattered more than anything else. By the end of their conversation, Carlos had agreed to come aboard. Word spread quickly among locals about Keanu's new venture. People were intrigued, not just because Keanu Reeves, the Hollywood star, was involved, but because of the values he was promoting. When job postings went up, dozens of applicants lined up, hoping to be part of something special. Keanu interviewed each candidate personally, asking questions that went beyond qualifications. He wanted to know their stories, their dreams, and what motivated them. Many of the people he hired came from backgrounds that might have disqualified them elsewhere. Single mothers juggling multiple jobs, veterans transitioning back to civilian life, and individuals rebuilding themselves after mistakes in their pasts. Among the hires was a woman named Maria, a former teacher turned stay-at-home mom who needed flexible hours to care for her children. There was also James, a former mechanic whose career had been derailed by addiction, but who was now 3 years sober and eager to prove himself. And then there was Marcus, a young man recently released from prison, desperate for a second chance. Each person brought something unique to the table, and Keanu made sure they felt valued from day one. Training sessions became a highlight of the early days at Reeves Roadsters. Keanu led many of them himself, sharing insights not just about cars but about how to treat customers with respect and empathy. "We're not here to sell cars," he told the team during one session. "We're here to help people find solutions. If someone walks in looking for advice, we give it to them, even if it means telling them not to buy a car right now." This philosophy resonated deeply with the staff, many of whom had experienced poor treatment at other jobs or businesses. For the first time in a long time, they felt like they were part of something bigger than themselves. Meanwhile, the showroom itself was coming together beautifully. Keanu had chosen a minimalist design, focusing on functionality and warmth rather than flashy gimmicks. The walls were painted a soft gray, creating a calming atmosphere, and large windows allowed natural light to flood the space. Instead of cluttering the floor with too many vehicles, Keanu opted for a curated selection, ensuring each car had room to shine. A cozy seating area with comfortable chairs and complimentary coffee greeted visitors, making them feel welcome from the moment they walked in. But perhaps the most striking feature of Reeves Roadsters was its transparency. Every car came with a detailed report outlining its history, condition, and pricing breakdown. No hidden fees, no fine print, just clear, honest information. Keanu also implemented a policy where customers could test drive any vehicle without pressure. Salespeople weren't paid based on commissions. Instead, they earned salaries designed to encourage genuine connections over aggressive selling. These practices set Reeves Roadsters apart from traditional dealerships and quickly earned praise from early visitors. On opening day, Keanu stood near the entrance, greeting customers with a warm smile. He wore the same simple outfit he'd worn to the cafe weeks earlier: jeans, a plain t-shirt, and his trusty leather jacket. Some people recognized him immediately, their eyes widening in surprise. Others mistook him for just another employee until someone pointed out who he really was. Regardless of whether they knew him as John Wick or Neo, everyone left feeling the same thing: respected. One customer, a young woman named Sarah, came in nervously clutching her savings. She had been saving for months to buy her first car, but worried she wouldn't qualify for financing. When Keanu noticed her hesitation, he sat down with her and listened to her concerns. Together, they worked out a payment plan tailored to her budget, ensuring she wouldn't feel overwhelmed. By the time Sarah drove off the lot in a sleek, compact sedan, tears of gratitude filled her eyes. "I've never been treated this way before," she admitted. "Thank you." Stories like Sarah's began to circulate, spreading through word of mouth and social media. Photos of Keanu shaking hands with customers, explaining engine specs, or even helping load groceries into trunks popped up on Instagram and Twitter. Fans marveled at how down-to-earth he remained despite his fame, while skeptics were won over by the authenticity of the operation. Before long, Reeves Roadsters wasn't just a local curiosity. It was a beacon of hope for anyone tired of being taken advantage of by big corporations. For Keanu, the success of the business wasn't measured in profits or sales numbers. It was reflected in the smiles of his employees, the relief of his customers, and the knowledge that he was making a difference. He often stayed late at the lot, tinkering with cars alongside Carlos or chatting with Maria about her kids' school projects. These moments reminded him why he had embarked on this journey in the first place: to create a space where kindness and integrity reigned supreme. As the weeks turned into months, Reeves Roadsters continued to grow. The lot expanded to accommodate more vehicles, and the team grew tighter-knit, functioning like a family. Keanu remained at the center of it all, leading by example and proving that leadership wasn't about authority, it was about service. Through every challenge and triumph, he held on to the belief that even the smallest acts of humanity could ripple outward, touching lives in ways he might never fully understand. And though Keanu rarely spoke about the incident at the other dealership, it lingered in the back of his mind as a reminder of why he had started this journey. What had begun as a moment of humiliation had blossomed into something far greater, a testament to the power of resilience, creativity, and compassion. The manager of Autohaven couldn't stop thinking about the man he had thrown out. At first, it was just a nagging feeling. a faint sense that something about the encounter had been off. He tried to brush it aside, convincing himself that he had done nothing wrong. After all, running a car dealership meant dealing with difficult customers every day. Some people wasted hours browsing without any intention of buying, and as far as the manager was concerned, Keanu had been one of them. But there was something different about this particular customer. The calmness in his voice, the quiet confidence in his eyes. It wasn't the behavior of someone who was unsure or indecisive. It was the demeanor of someone who knew exactly what they wanted but wasn't willing to compromise their values for it. Still, the manager dismissed these thoughts as paranoia. "It's not like he'll ever come back," he muttered to himself, shaking his head. And even if he did, what difference would it make? One lost sale wasn't going to bring down the entire business. Days turned into weeks, and life at Auto Haven continued as usual. Sales were steady, though not spectacular. The manager kept pushing his team to close more deals, reminding them that numbers mattered above everything else. Yet, despite his efforts, something felt off. Customers seemed less enthusiastic than before, lingering only briefly in the showroom before leaving without making a purchase. Complaints trickled in. Comments about high-pressure tactics, misleading pricing, and a lack of transparency. None of this was new. Such feedback came with the territory of running a dealership, but lately, it felt like the complaints were piling up faster than usual. One evening, while scrolling through Instagram during a rare quiet moment, the manager stumbled upon a post that stopped him cold. A photo of a familiar face stared back at him from the screen. It was the same man, the one he had shoved out of his dealership weeks earlier. Except now, the caption beneath the image read, "Hollywood legend turned car salesman, Keanu Reeves proves kindness still exists." Beneath the caption were several photos showcasing Keanu behind the counter of what appeared to be a thriving car dealership. In one picture, he was shaking hands with a young couple, smiling warmly as they signed paperwork. In another, he stood beside rows of well-maintained vehicles, pointing out features to a potential buyer. There were also shots of him fixing a flat tire himself, sleeves rolled up and dirt smudged on his hands. Each image radiated authenticity, a stark contrast to the polished but impersonal vibe of Auto Haven. The manager froze, his heart sinking, as the reality of the situation hit him. That quiet, unassuming man he had dismissed as an ordinary customer wasn't just anyone, he was Keanu Reeves. Not only had the manager humiliated a global celebrity, but he had unknowingly inspired a competitor poised to revolutionize the industry. Panic set in as he scrolled further, reading comments from delighted customers praising Keanu's approachable nature and the ethical standards of his dealership, Reeves Roadsters. "This place is amazing. No pressure, no hidden fees, just honest service," one comment read. "Never thought I'd meet Keanu Reeves while buying a car. He treated me like family," another added. The manager's mind raced. How could he have been so blind? What had started as a minor incident had spiraled into a full-blown crisis for Auto Haven. While Reeves Roadsters gained traction, attracting attention from locals and fans alike, his own dealership was struggling. Foot traffic had dwindled, and sales figures were plummeting. Employees whispered nervously about layoffs, and morale among the staff was at an all-time low. Desperate for answers, the manager began researching Reeves Roadsters. He visited the website, which boasted glowing testimonials and transparent pricing. He watched videos of satisfied customers sharing their experiences, many of whom praised the dealership's emphasis on fairness and respect. The more he learned, the clearer it became. Keanu wasn't just selling cars, he was building relationships. Every aspect of Reeves Roadsters was designed to make people feel valued, from the cozy seating area to the absence of pushy sales tactics. It wasn't long before the manager realized the truth. Keanu hadn't opened Reeves Roadsters because he needed money or fame. He had done it because he believed in creating something better, a business model rooted in humanity rather than greed. And in doing so, he had exposed the flaws of dealerships like Auto Haven, where profit often came at the expense of integrity. Haunted By guilt and fear for the future of his business, the manager decided he had to take action. He couldn't undo the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could make amends. Gathering his courage, he drove to Reeves Roadsters, half expecting to be turned away. As he approached the lot, he noticed how inviting it looked. The signage was simple yet elegant, and the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. Cars gleamed under the sunlight, arranged neatly with plenty of space for customers to explore. When he entered the showroom, he was greeted by a young woman named Maria, who offered him a friendly smile. "Can I help you with anything?" she asked. The manager hesitated, unsure of how to explain his presence. Before he could respond, a familiar voice called out, "Hey, can I get some help over here?" Turning toward the sound, the manager saw Keanu walking toward him, wiping grease-stained hands on a rag. For a moment, the two men simply stared at each other. The manager braced himself for anger or disdain, but instead, Keanu smiled warmly. "You're the manager from Autohaven, right?" he said, extending a hand. The manager nodded, his cheeks burning with shame. I wanted to apologize," he stammered. "What I did that day, it was wrong. I didn't recognize you, and I treated you poorly. I'm sorry." To his surprise, Keanu didn't react with bitterness or sarcasm. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully, his expression softening. "Apology accepted," he replied. Then motioning toward a small seating area near the window, he added, "Let's talk." Over coffee, the manager poured out his story. He explained how the stress of running a dealership had made him jaded, how he had let arrogance cloud his judgment. He admitted that seeing Reeves Roadsters succeed had forced him to confront the shortcomings of his own business. "I messed up," he concluded, his voice heavy with regret. "Not just with you, but with so many others. I don't know how to fix it." Keanu listened quietly, his gaze steady and understanding. When the manager finished speaking, Keanu leaned forward slightly. "We all make mistakes," he said gently. "The question is, what are we going to do about them?" He paused, then continued. "Your dealership doesn't have to stay the way it is. You can change it. Start by treating your customers like people, not transactions. Hire employees who care about serving others, not just hitting quotas. Be honest, even when it's hard. It won't happen overnight, but if you stick with it, people will notice." The manager nodded, absorbing Keanu's words. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late to turn things around. As they parted ways, Keanu handed him a card with the address of Reeves Roadsters. "If you ever need advice, or if you're looking for a fresh start, you know where to find me," he said with a reassuring smile. Driving back to Autohaven, the manager replayed the conversation in his mind. Keanu's forgiveness had been unexpected, but it wasn't what stuck with him most. What lingered was the realization that success wasn't defined by wealth or power. It was about impact. For too long, the manager had focused on numbers and profits, losing sight of the human element that truly mattered. Now, armed with newfound resolve, he vowed to rebuild his dealership, not as a rival to Reeves Roadsters, but as a reflection of the principles Keanu embodied. Change wouldn't come easily, but the manager was ready to try. After all, sometimes, the greatest lessons come from our biggest mistakes and the people brave enough to forgive us for them. The manager's apology had been genuine, but Keanu knew that words alone weren't enough to rebuild trust. Actions spoke louder than promises, and he wanted to see if the man was truly committed to changing his ways. Still, there was something about the manager's sincerity that resonated with Keanu. It reminded him of his own journey, the moments when he'd stumbled, made mistakes, and had to pick himself back up. Everyone deserved a second chance, even those who had wronged them. They sat together in the cozy corner of Reeves Roadsters. Keanu decided to take a leap of faith. "Listen," he began, leaning forward slightly. "I believe people can change. You came here today because you're ready to try, and that says a lot. So, I'm going to offer you something, not just for your sake, but for the sake of the people who work at Autohaven and the customers you serve." The manager looked up, startled. He hadn't expected forgiveness, let alone an opportunity. "What do you mean?" he asked cautiously, unsure of what Keanu might propose. Keanu smiled, faintly. Come work with us, for now at least. See how we operate. Learn what it means to run a business built on kindness and integrity. If you're serious about turning things around, this could be the start of something new. The manager blinked, stunned by the unexpected offer. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Here was Keanu Reeves, the very person he had insulted, and thrown out of his dealership, extending not just forgiveness but also a lifeline. The gesture was almost too much to process. "Are you sure?" he finally managed to ask, his voice trembling slightly. "After everything I did, why would you give me a chance?" Keanu shrugged, his expression calm and thoughtful. "Because holding on to anger doesn't help anyone. And because I think everyone deserves a shot to make things right, especially when they're willing to admit they were wrong. This isn't about me or you anymore. It's about creating something better, for your employees, your customers, and yourself." The manager felt tears welling up in his eyes, though he tried to blink them away. He wasn't used to vulnerability. Years of running a cutthroat dealership had hardened him in ways he barely noticed until now. But sitting across from Keanu, hearing those simple yet profound words, he realized how far he had strayed from the values he once held dear. Determination swelled within him. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I won't let you down." True to his word, Keanu welcomed the manager into the fold of Reeves Roadsters. At first, the arrangement was informal. The manager shadowed different members of the team, observing how they interacted with customers and handled day-to-day operations. He watched as Maria greeted visitors with warmth, ensuring they felt comfortable before diving into discussions about cars. He saw Carlos meticulously inspect vehicles, explaining technical details in a way that was easy to understand. Most importantly, he witnessed Keanu himself pitching in wherever needed, whether it was answering phones, organizing paperwork, or helping load groceries into a customer's trunk. Each interaction reinforced the core philosophy behind Reeves Roadsters. Respect mattered more than sales figures. Transparency wasn't just a buzzword, it was a way of life. Watching this firsthand, the manager began to see the flaws in his old approach. His relentless focus on profit margins had blinded him to the human element of the business. Customers weren't numbers. They were people with stories, needs, and dreams. Employees weren't cogs in a machine. They were individuals seeking purpose and fulfillment. Over time, the manager started contributing in small but meaningful ways. He helped tidy up the showroom after busy days, assisted with inventory checks, and even joined Keanu during community outreach events. These activities allowed him to reconnect with the joy of serving others, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Slowly but surely, he began to shed the weight of guilt and regret that had burdened him since his fateful encounter with Keanu. One afternoon, while sorting through paperwork in the office, the manager overheard a conversation between two customers. They were discussing their experiences at Reeves Roadsters and comparing it to other dealerships they'd visited, including Auto Haven. One woman remarked, "This place is so refreshing. No one tries to pressure you into buying something you don't need. It feels like they actually care." Her friend nodded in agreement. "Yeah, remember that guy at Auto Haven? What was his name again? Oh, right. The one who practically threw us out when we couldn't decide fast enough." The manager winced at the memory. That guy was him, and hearing his behavior described so bluntly stung. Yet, instead of retreating into shame, he resolved to use the feedback as motivation. If he could transform himself, then maybe he could inspire others to follow suit. Months passed, and the manager became an integral part of the Reeves Roadsters team. His past missteps were never forgotten, but they no longer defined him. Instead, he embraced the opportunity to grow, learning from Keanu and the rest of the staff. When he eventually returned to Auto Haven to implement the lessons he'd learned, he did so with a renewed sense of purpose. Under his leadership, Auto Haven underwent a dramatic transformation. Gone were the high-pressure sales tactics and hidden fees. In their place came open communication, fair pricing, and a commitment to treating every customer with dignity. The manager hired new employees based on character rather than quotas, prioritizing empathy and teamwork above all else. He even reached out to local charities, offering discounted rates to families in need and donating older vehicles to organizations supporting low-income communities. News of the changes spread quickly, and soon Autohaven began to regain its footing. Former customers returned, pleasantly surprised by the improvements, while newcomers praised the dealership's fresh approach. Though it still operated on a smaller scale compared to Reeves Roadsters, Autohaven carved out its own niche, one rooted in redemption and resilience. Throughout it all, Keanu remained a guiding light. Whenever the manager faced challenges or doubted his ability to sustain the changes, Keanu offered encouragement and advice. "You've already proven you can do this," he would say. "Trust yourself and keep putting people first." By the end of the year, both dealerships stood as testaments to the power of second chances. Reeves Roadsters continued to thrive, its reputation for kindness and transparency spreading far beyond the town where it started. Meanwhile, Autohaven emerged stronger than ever, a symbol of how accountability and hard work could turn failure into success. Looking back on the journey, the manager often reflected on the day he had insulted and dismissed Keanu. What had seemed like a minor incident had set off a chain reaction that changed his life forever. Without realizing it, he had given Keanu the push he needed to create something extraordinary, and in doing so, had opened the door to his own transformation. It was a reminder that even our biggest mistakes could lead to unexpected blessings if we were brave enough to face them head-on. And sometimes all it took was one act of kindness to spark a ripple effect that touched countless lives. As the months turned into years, Reeves Roadsters became more than just a car dealership. It evolved into a symbol of hope and humanity. People from all walks of life visited not only to buy cars, but also to experience the unique atmosphere Keanu had cultivated. The lot buzzed with energy, yet it never felt chaotic or overwhelming. Customers were greeted warmly, their questions answered patiently, and their concerns addressed honestly. It wasn't uncommon for visitors to leave saying things like, "I didn't think dealerships could be this nice," or, "For the first time, I actually enjoyed shopping for a car." Keanu remained at the heart of it all, though he made sure he wasn't the center of attention. He worked alongside his team, rolling up his sleeves whenever necessary. On some days, you'd find him behind the counter helping customers calculate payments. On others, he'd be outside washing cars or fixing minor issues under the hood. His presence was constant, yet understated, a quiet reminder that leadership meant serving others rather than standing above them. What truly set Reeves Roadsters apart, however, was its impact beyond sales figures. The dealership became a hub for community engagement, hosting events like free car maintenance workshops, back-to-school drives for local schools, and holiday food giveaways for families in need. Keanu believed strongly in giving back, and these initiatives reflected his commitment to making a difference. One particularly popular event was Second Chance Saturday, where individuals who had difficulty finding employment due to past mistakes could meet potential employers and learn new skills. Many attendees credited these opportunities with turning their lives around. Word of Reeves Roadsters spread far and wide, drawing attention not just locally but nationally. Journalists wrote articles about Keanu's unconventional venture, highlighting how a Hollywood star had traded red carpets for grease-stained overalls. Social media posts featuring Keanu shaking hands with customers or fixing flat tires went viral, sparking conversations about kindness, humility, and the importance of treating people with respect. Fans marveled at how down-to-earth he remained, despite his fame, while skeptics were won over by the authenticity of the operation. But perhaps the most touching aspect of Reeves Roadsters was the stories it inspired. Countless customers shared tales of how the dealership had helped them during difficult times. A single mother named Lisa recalled how Keanu personally worked out a payment plan so she could afford a reliable car for her kids. "He didn't just sell me a vehicle," she said. "He gave me peace of mind." Another customer, an elderly man named George, remembered being offered a ride home after his old truck broke down on the highway. "They didn't have to do that," he said. tears glistening in his eyes. But they did. That's the kind of place this is. Meanwhile, Autohaven flourished under the manager's renewed leadership. The changes he implemented weren't easy. There were moments of doubt, setbacks, and resistance from longtime employees accustomed to the old ways. But he persevered. Inspired by Keanu's example, he focused on creating a culture of empathy and transparency. Slowly but surely, the dealership regained the trust of its customers and became known as a place where fairness mattered more than profit. The bond between Keanu and the manager grew stronger over time. They stayed in touch regularly, exchanging ideas and supporting each other through challenges. Though their paths had diverged, one continuing to expand Reeves Roadsters, the other rebuilding Autohaven, they remained united by a shared belief in the power of integrity and second chances. During one conversation, the manager thanked Keanu again for everything he had done. "You didn't just save my business," he said. "You saved me." Keanu smiled, brushing off the praise with characteristic humility. "It wasn't me," he replied. "You did the hard work. All I did was remind you of what you already knew deep down, that success isn't about money or titles. It's about the lives we touch and the legacies we leave behind." Years later, when asked about the infamous incident that sparked it all, Keanu simply chuckled. "Sometimes life gives you a punch," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But how you respond defines your journey." For him, the altercation at the dealership hadn't been a low point. It had been a catalyst. It pushed him to create something meaningful, something that aligned with his values. And in doing so, it allowed him to inspire countless others to do the same. The manager echoed these sentiments whenever he spoke publicly about his transformation. "I was arrogant, selfish, and blind to the harm I was causing," he admitted during an interview. "But meeting Keanu taught me that it's never too late to change. If I can turn my life around, anyone can." Together, Keanu and the manager proved that businesses could, and should, be forces for good. Their story served as a powerful reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples far beyond what anyone might expect. Dealerships, once seen as places driven solely by greed, became symbols of compassion and community. Employees found purpose in their work, knowing they were part of something bigger than themselves, and customers left feeling valued, carrying those positive experiences into their daily lives. In the end, Keanu's legacy extended far beyond the silver screen. While his movies entertained millions, Reeves Roadsters touched hearts in ways no film ever could. It showed that true greatness wasn't measured by awards or accolades, but by the impact we leave on the world and the people around us. Whether it was through a warm smile, a helping hand, or a simple act of forgiveness, Keanu reminded everyone that humanity was the greatest gift we could offer, and the most enduring one we could receive. And so, the journey that began with a shove out of a dealership culminated in a movement rooted in kindness, resilience, and redemption. Both Reeves Roadsters and Autohaven stood as testaments to the idea that even the unlikeliest beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes. As Keanu often said, "Every road has bumps, but it's up to us to decide where they take us." For him, the road led to a brighter future, not just for himself, but for everyone lucky enough to cross his path.